Hey friends, welcome to Enjoy Teaching Again, the podcast for teachers who love the work but need a little spark to bring the joy back. I'm your host, Elizabeth Peterson, classroom teacher, arts integration specialist, and passionate educator of over 25 years. If you're overwhelmed by behaviors, disengaged students, and long, exhausting days, you are not alone. But together, we can turn things around and you can teach with confidence and purpose again. So locate that cold coffee of yours, find your favorite pen, I know you have one, and let's dive in. It's time to get inspired and enjoy teaching again. I'm excited to share with you a conversation I had with Natayle Brown. Now, Natalie has a website where she shares so many of her amazing ELA resources that help teachers to find simple and effective ways to bring reading and writing and grammar to life in their classroom. You definitely need to check out her website. I'll put the link in the show notes. But you're going to love this conversation because we talk specifically about the students who are struggling, the students who are stuck and really need help getting out of their own way so that they can be successful in the classroom, specifically with ELA. And it's the perfect time for us to be talking about this topic because Natalie is hosting an Unstuck Literacy Conference. It's a 3-day, absolutely free virtual conference where you can learn from so many amazing ELA teachers and literacy specialists and gain some really great practical strategies for the readers who are struggling in your classroom. And I'm talking this particular conference was built with secondary teachers in mind, so grades 6 through 12. But let's face it, we all teach readers, right? We all teach ELA. We all teach struggling readers as well. So there's going to be so many amazing strategies and ideas that you're going to get from this conference. And I'm excited to tell you that I am going to be one of the presenters as well. It's a free virtual conference from June 23rd to 25th. And if you register by going to theinspiredclassroom.com/unstuck, you'll get access to all of the amazing sessions for 48 hours so you can watch them at your leisure. Okay? So go to theinspiredclassroom.com/unstuck. But first, so to give you an idea of what is behind this amazing conference, I bring to you my conversation with Natalie. Well, hello, Natalie. I'm so glad you're here with me today to talk about ELA and struggling students and your conference as well. How are you today?
I'm good, and I'm so excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this all week because there's just so much going on and so many exciting things.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. So tell a little bit about your role right now in education.
Yeah, so right now my work is heynatalie.com, and it's really focused on helping middle grade ELA teachers. So think upper elementary, middle school, and occasionally early high school, and primarily just with resources to teach, short stories, informational texts. And my latest rabbit hole is morphology. So digging into the research and looking at it from the angle of how can this be applied in the classroom in the easiest but most effective way.
Yes, because that's what teachers really need. That's what we're craving.
Yes, absolutely. It's always like we're missing that bridge of like, okay, how do I actually do this?
Yeah. So were you a teacher before?
Yes. So I actually came at this from an unusual angle. I taught kindergarten through third grade.
Hmm.
That was my first teaching job. Actually, was for the first few years I taught direct instruction, foundational reading skills, kindergarten through third grade,
Yeah.
small groups all day. And then moved into first grade, spent a few years there, then third grade, and then eventually ended up in middle school.
Yeah.
And so kind of that journey shapes everything that I do now.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so well said too, because our journeys definitely shape who we become and what we do and how we end up helping other teachers, right?
Yes,
And so,
absolutely.
yeah, and I know you're no stranger to some of the struggles that teachers are having, right? So we're seeing kids that are shutting down and disengaged, avoiding some of the challenging work. Why do you think that is, especially in the ELA classrooms?
So obviously there's so many things at play, and I don't want to overgeneralize,
Hmm.
but I think there are three big things that stand out to me. And the first is attention.
Hmm.
When I first started teaching back in the early 2010s, I remember going to a specific PD, um, and they told us to keep, their advice was to keep any chunk of instruction to about 7 minutes because that was the average attention span.
Right. Yep.
And interestingly, that number was arrived at due to the length that a TV show ran before a commercial break. So at that time, our attention was calibrated to the content we consumed, and
Hmm.
it still is. But the problem is the content we're consuming now is short form content that is 10, 15, 30 seconds long. 30 seconds is practically long form at this point. So both adults and kids are working with much shorter attention spans now than they were even 5 years ago.
Hmm.
And the second thing is dopamine. So we've
Yes.
conditioned our brains to expect constant rewards while simultaneously developing really low tolerance for discomfort.
Hmm.
And school is by nature uncomfortable and not inherently dopamine inducing.
Right.
And the core principles of learning, reading, writing, listening, thinking, they all stretch the brain and they're necessary and good, but they don't come with the instant reward the environment outside of school has trained them to expect, right? It's like eating a nutritionally dense meal of broccoli and chicken and a side of brown rice versus a bag of Doritos and Diet Coke. I can tell you which one your brain will want to reach for. So you put those two things together, extremely short attention spans and a brain wired to crave the easy or pleasurable thing, and you get the third piece, which is the one that I think matters the most, which is an inverse relationship between the perceived level of difficulty of something and our students' willingness to try it. So the harder it feels, the faster they're shutting down. And in the classroom, when we ask them to write a 5 paragraph essay, in 1 or 2 sentences already feels difficult, or, read a novel, a whole novel when a single page feels hard. It's like asking a casual runner to run a marathon.
Yeah.
The gap between what our students feel capable of and what we're asking is just too wide. And so I think we see that shut down before they even start.
Mm. Yeah, you make some really good points there. That those are all our external things that are happening outside of schools that are just so very much affecting our education system. And yet our education system seems to stay stagnant, doesn't
Yep,
it?
absolutely.
Oh man. So I'm curious, how can teachers kind of tell the difference between a student who might be being defiant, because that's what I hear from a lot of teachers is it's student behavior, and a student who is really just feeling overwhelmed or even stuck.
Yeah, so this one's tricky because I feel like there's a lot of overlap. Overwhelm and skill deficits often get masked as defiance because for a lot of students, acting out is actually the safer option. If I act like I don't care, then the teacher, or better yet, my peers won't find out that I don't know how to actually do this. I won't be
Yes.
embarrassed. I won't get pulled into a small group with the other students who don't get it. So, from an adult's perspective, the behavior looks like defiance, but for the student, it might look more like protection.
Hmm.
So, I think when we're trying to tell the difference, there's three things to look for. Obviously, the first one is data. If the student is sitting below or around, like the 20th percentile in the skill we're asking them to use, we could reasonably assume that the resistance might be related to a skill gap, unless proven otherwise.
Hmm.
Chances are high that the behavior is almost certainly covering for something they most likely can't do yet. But if they're in the 30th, 40th, 50th percentile and shutting down, now we might be looking at it being possibly a behavior or a buy-in issue.
Hmm.
So second, I would say check to see if the resistance is consistent. A truly defiant student resists pretty much across the board, whether that's in science, math, ELA, coding, you name it.
Right.
It's less about the work and more about something else. But if it tends to occur at specific moments,
Hmm.
which might be when the task demand exceeds their skill,
Hmm.
then it's probably more likely to be insecurity wearing a defiance costume. So then the last thing I would look at is what happens when we lower the difficulty. If we embed scaffolds or, tier the tasks a little bit and we give them a way in, do we see them softening or re-engaging if it feels reachable? Because I think a truly defiant student will keep pushing back even when we've made it more accessible.
That's great. And I think that right there is like the key tester that teachers can just do practically in their classroom is just bring that level down a little bit and see what happens then. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So, what could be like the sweet spot? Like, how do we create work that challenges students, but without pushing them into that frame of like shut down?
So I love the old textbook phrases, but the key idea to me is always the zone of proximal development. And obviously, there is
Hmm.
some art and craft to finding that zone of proximal development, but we want to figure out what is that comfort level that the student's living in, and how can we start there and then stretch them right to the edge of it so that we're always nudging that boundary a little further out. We don't necessarily want to lower the challenge. We want to keep the challenge, but maybe change how they get there.
Hmm.
And so I think that the first thing we can do is adjust the support. So it's kind of back to that marathon idea. You don't cancel the marathon that you're not ready for, you train for it. So plan with the end in mind. What do we ultimately want the student to be able to do? What's the best path to get them there? And early on, that might be heavy scaffolding, a lot of assistance, working with content that they already know something about and, that lights them up.
Hmm.
And then as the unit goes on, we slowly peel those things away,
Hmm.
while, we're keeping the end goal the same. We're not making that easier. We're just changing how much help they get and how independently they get there.
Hmm.
And then I think the other thing is, kind of changing the costume. If we can't simplify the task and we can't simplify the topic because we're bound to a particular curriculum, then maybe we can dress it up as something students actually want to do. Our kids are naturally
Yeah.
gravitating towards video games, sports, TikTok, Rubik's cubes, music, you name it. So if we can somehow pull pieces of those things and frame the task around that, then we might increase the buy-in. So an example of this might be, in my world, maybe I want students to identify the central idea of a text and key details that support it. So instead of a worksheet that they're going to grumble about immediately,
Hmm.
maybe I build a football themed choice board. And it's got, a task at the 30-yard line and a task at the 50-yard line and a task in the red zone and then the touchdown. So each milestone is related to the skill. The rigor hasn't necessarily changed. We've just changed the costume that it's wearing to try to increase, their likelihood of wanting to participate. So, the challenge doesn't change. We're just adjusting either the scaffolding or the skin.
Yeah, I love that. And I have a feeling that some teachers that are listening have a few kids in mind as you're
Always.
talking, right? Awesome. And so, yeah, I was going to ask you about like how can this really show up specifically with reading and writing instruction because your whole website is really focused on ELA. So, do you have any other examples of how this can really show up for those types of topics?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think all content areas want to say that they're unique, and they all are, but I think that one of the ways that ELA is different than other subjects is that reading and writing are both uniquely exposing and uniquely ambiguous. So that combination can be really tough on a struggling student. When we talk about the exposure piece, think about when we ask a student to read aloud in front of their peers and they're not a confident reader. That can be really humiliating. And writing is also similar. We're asking our students to expose themselves by putting their thinking on paper
Mm-hmm.
for someone else to judge. And I think as teachers, when we think about the exposure piece, we can be thoughtful about how public we make the risk. So perhaps instead of asking a student to read aloud to the whole class, we ask them to read to a partner. Or instead of sharing their answers cold in front of everyone, maybe it's a turn and talk first so that they get a chance to test their thinking, hear other viewpoints, and build a little confidence before they put themselves out there. And then the other piece was the ambiguity. Math is black and white, and the answer is right or it's wrong. ELA is not so much like that.
Right.
Is this good writing? Well, it depends on who's reading it. Is your analysis of the theme correct? Well, it depends on how well you justified it and how much evidence you brought. So much of ELA is left to interpretation, and that uncertainty is really hard for all of our students to navigate, let alone, readers who are struggling to figure out where the finish line is. And so, coming at this from a middle school angle and even high school, my son is in high school, and I think that one of the things that I think is really important to be careful of, especially as our students get older, is the mindset that there's one right answer when there often isn't. And so it's, reframing that we're not necessarily looking for the answer that the teacher is looking for. Our goals are to weigh different perspectives, evaluate evidence, and think critically. And the more we can shift our students from what's the right answer to how do I build a defensible one, then the better off they are.
And that kind of leads more into like just the real world skills that kids are going to need, right? We need them to be able to think on their own. And don't get me started on how AI is affecting that right now, the whole conversation.
Oh,
But
yeah.
it's so true because, they need to really develop those critical thinking skills that we've been talking about for decades. But right now, it seems like this is this moment in education where if we don't help kids to learn these types of skills, then it's really going to be detrimental to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, okay, so I'm curious, what are some other small ways that ELA teachers can just kind of lower that risk of a task without lowering the expectations? Because a lot of times teachers will automatically think, well, if I'm lowering what I'm asking the kid to do, I'm lowering my expectations. And we need to keep high expectations. So, what are some things that teachers might want to keep in mind?
Yeah. So I think that maybe a better way of thinking about it sometimes is that lowering the risk means reducing the fear of failure, not necessarily the difficulty of work. So if we're talking about lowering the risk when running a marathon, we'd talk about intentional training routines, mobility, recovery, pacing. The expectation doesn't change. It's just how we get there. And the same is true in ELA. How do we make the task less scary to attempt? And I think, in ELA, especially in the upper grades, it comes down to one main move, and that's helping students access the text without lowering the thinking that we expect them to do with it, that critical thinking piece. So if the goal is for students to determine the theme of a piece of literature and explain how the author developed it, and the barrier is simply accessing the text, then we need to give them another way in. Reading with a partner, listening to an audio version, or jumping in a small group with the teacher. We still want them to do the same analysis and thinking as everyone else. They just need help getting into the text. If the barrier is getting started when writing, then maybe we just need to provide them some sentence stems or show them some mentor sentences. We want to keep the critical thinking piece high. We just need to remove the thing that's blocking the door.
Yeah, and this can be for middle and high school students as well, because I think there's also a little bit of a block there that oh, that's so elementary. I am lowering my expectations when I give like a 12 or 13-year-old a sentence stem, but it's not.
Absolutely. And I think we have to keep what's the ultimate goal in mind? What are we truly measuring here? And we have to be cognizant of, the barriers. Is the barrier in the task itself, or is the barrier just even getting to the task? Yeah, I think that's really important for all grades.
Yeah. And if it ultimately leads to the kid being invested in his learning, then I mean that's really, I think, the ultimate goal here, right? Is to
Absolutely. And I
get
think
them in.
success breeds success, right? So even if we are, helping a student access the task in the beginning, our goal is, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's that we're trying to get them started and build momentum so that they can ride the bike on their own.
Exactly. Exactly. Regardless of their age.
Yes,
Because there are some older kids that still don't know how to ride bikes, and we need to teach
right.
them. It's all good. It's all
Or
good.
tie shoes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh my gosh, tying shoes. So, what would you say to teachers who just kind of feel like, they've already tried everything with some of their most difficult students?
So for those teachers, I just want to start with a hard and uncomfortable truth.
Hmm.
Sometimes teaching is just a thankless job. You pour into a student and you get nothing back. You reach out to parents to no avail, and you have no idea if any of it is making a difference.
Hmm.
But teachers are incredible. They keep showing up anyway. And I think that even when you can't see the impact you're making, it's like boiling water, right? There's so much happening before the water ever bubbles. Even though it seems like nothing is happening, there's a lot that's happening from like 55-degree tap water that needs to boil at 200 degrees, right? It
Yeah.
looks like nothing's happening between 55 and 200 degrees,
Hmm.
but change happens slowly and we might not be able to see it working yet. But that doesn't mean that it isn't. So give yourself a pep talk. Talk to your teacher bestie. Take the breather that you need, but don't quit because you never know how close you are to boiling. And I think this, or the water is to boiling. And I think
Hmm.
the second thing that I'd say is that sometimes a breakthrough is not necessarily a new strategy. And in fact, most of the time it's not.
Right.
It's being consistent with small little things that you already do well. Don't exhaust yourself chasing the next strategy. Sometimes students just need steady, dependable things over and over.
Hmm.
So give yourself permission to do less, but do it consistently. And then I think the last thing I'd say is sometimes we just need a little bit better insight into who the kid actually is outside the classroom. Zoom out for a second, consider who they are, not as a reader or a writer or a mathematician, but who they are as a person. What is home like? How many siblings do they have? What are they responsible for when they leave your classroom? What are they interested in? What are they really good at? And I know that it sounds cliche, but as I've gotten older, I've watched my own kids move through the system and I realized how much it matters to see students as kids, as humans
Yes.
who are still figuring everything out. And when we zoom out and have a little bit more compassion for who they are as a person, it gets a little bit easier to keep going, try again, keep working on that connection.
Love that. I love that. So that would bring me to this next question I have, or not even a question. I just want you to tell a little bit about the upcoming Unstuck conference that you are hosting, and I'm so excited to be part of. My presentation is called Before the Strategy, the three things that your struggling students need to even start. And I think that this conversation that we're having is like the perfect complement and like partnership for the presentation that I'm going to be giving. So tell us a little bit about the Unstuck conference. What makes this different from other professional development experiences that teachers attend, and what can we expect when teachers start registering?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm so excited to host this. It's been a long time coming. The
Uh,
dream kind of came up last December and it's been, quite a bit of work to get all the parts and pieces together, but I'm
mhm.
really excited. And I think that what makes the Unstuck conference different is that it's built by and for upper grade ELA teachers, particularly grades 6 through 12, who aren't necessarily in that elementary setting anymore and are working with 45 minutes to 55 minutes with students.
Mhm.
It's a lineup of ELA teachers and literacy specialists, and it's built around one very specific problem that seems to come up again and again, and even more frequently this year than it has in years past. So in secondary ELA, we're teaching kids to think critically, right? And there's so much that goes into that. We're asking them to weigh evidence, trace an argument, follow the development of a theme or a plot, judge whether sources are credible, synthesize information across texts. And every one of those tasks assumes that students can access, engage with, and make meaning from the text in front of them, right?
Which we all
And
know is really not happening.
oh my goodness, right. So it's like that whole we can't even get in the door,
Yes.
to do this work. So that seems to be one of the biggest issues right now. We can't get a student to analyze the theme of a text that they can't even access. So like I said in the beginning, what makes this really tricky in 6th through 12th grades is that these teachers are working with 45 to 60 minutes, maybe 90 minutes if they're running on a block schedule. And it's just not built for pulling a small group aside to work on some of these foundational reading pieces. And not just that, but most of these secondary teachers were not trained as reading teachers. They are English teachers, they're content experts. So we've got these groups of students sitting in the 10 to 20th percentile who aren't on an IEP, they don't have an aid, and they're trying to keep up with the work that assumes a skill that hasn't been mastered yet.
Right.
So that's the reason this conference exists. And what I genuinely love about it is that I've gotten the opportunity to interview some speakers and meet teachers like you and read through these session pitches, and they're incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got classroom teachers, literacy specialists, a dyslexia therapist, this group of educators who took foundational literacy seriously and figured out ways to bring concepts into secondary classrooms or working with, some of these teenage students without making these kids feel like they're in early elementary. And so the conference comes at this problem from a lot of angles, not just one. We want to talk about how do we know if a student is unwilling or unable? How do we run guided reading in these blocks? How do we build vocabulary? How do we give these students the time and space to process what they read? So what makes this conference different is just that it's timely, it's relatable, and it solves a real specific problem that these teachers are facing right now without asking them to water down curriculum or lower their expectations to do it.
Yes, absolutely. So what is something that you're most excited for teachers to walk away with after your conference?
So the part I'm actually most excited about has less to do with the conference and more about who the teacher gets to be when they walk away. So
Yeah.
there's two sides to this. On the practical side, obviously, I want them to leave with a handful of strategies that they can regularly and easily embed in their regular ELA classroom every single day without tons of prep, without changing their curriculum, without lowering their standards. And the practical side kind of falls into these 3 moments of a lesson, the natural rhythm of a class period. I want them to walk away with a couple of ways to kick off class that builds connection and increases student buy-in and builds anticipation and background knowledge. I want them to walk away with a few strategies for getting students into the text so that struggling readers can play the game without you having to dial back the rigor for, your on or above grade level students. And then the last moment of the lesson, I want teachers to walk away with a few moves to help struggling readers process what they read so that they're set up for those harder, more analytical tasks that come next. But then on the emotional side, I want these teachers to walk away with hope. So many of us sit down with our data, whether it's the beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, and we just feel a sense of hopelessness or helplessness when we're looking at these reds and these yellows and wondering how on earth we're going to move these kids to a level 3 or, proficiency, whatever your state calls it.
Yep.
And I want teachers to leave that feeling behind and walk away thinking, okay, this is in my locus of control.
Yeah.
I have a plan. I have these small doable moves that I can embed every single day to build these students up without holding any others back. It's not going to take a wholesale curriculum change. It's not going to take an extra period of the day. If I'm just consistent with some of these smaller moves, then that might help them shift from feeling helpless to feeling like I've got this.
Yes, I love that. And yeah, I've been looking at some of the presentation write-ups, and they look so good. And I think mine is going to be like the kickoff on the first day practically. So I'm really excited because, yep, it's before you get to those strategies, what are those things you can do to really warm up your kids and get them in and a little bit more invested in their class time. That's awesome. So to sign up, for those who are listening and want in, this is a completely free conference. So you can sign up. The link is theinspiredclassroom.com/unstuck. And where else can teachers learn more about you, Natalie, and get more information about some of the things you do for ELA teachers?
Yeah, so the best place is my website, heynatayle.com. My name is spelt a little funny. It's Natayle. But that's the home base for everything that I do with morphology, ELA content for, 5th through 8th grade primarily. But yeah, if you teach, students in this band and you've got some struggling readers, grab a free ticket for the conference. And it's, June 23rd through June 25th. It's packed with great sessions. I'm so excited for your session and so many others.
Thank you. Yeah, it's going to be great. And I would even venture to say, even if ELA is like on your heart and you just want some inspiration, sign up for this conference because, even if you don't teach high school or even middle school, there's going to be so much value at this conference. You will glean. That's what I find with so many teachers is no matter what kind of PD they attend, if it's good, they are constantly thinking, how can I make this work for my kids? And there's going to be just so much there that they can
absolutely. I interviewed one of the speakers last week, and she was talking about how she did a building level PD. And, the biology teacher, this is a high school setting, and the biology teacher was just raving about, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how difficult this text was for 5 to 7 of these students. And I tried those things you told me about, and it was just mind blowing. Yes. And so I think so many, of these sessions don't just apply to ELA. Students are reading in science and in social studies and in math. And these strategies also apply to those content areas because reading and writing are not something that happen in a silo. So,
yep. And they're at that place where, they're reading to learn, right? They really, and so much writing is expected of them as they keep on going through their schooling. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of great stuff that so many teachers can glean from.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Natalie, for coming and taking some time to speak with me and really get into some of the nitty gritty about some of these kids that we just really, truly want to get unstuck so that they can start thriving in the classroom and beyond. So thank you so much for being here with me.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so excited to collaborate on the conference, and I'll see you there.
So there you go. Be sure to join Natalie and me and 19 other wonderful speakers who are specializing in ELA, in literacy, and in helping you to get your students unstuck. Go ahead and go to theinspiredclassroom.com/unstuck. That's theinspiredclassroom.com/UNSTUCK. I can't wait to see you in there. I hope this episode inspired you, encouraged you, or gave you a fresh idea to try. And if so, I would love for you to take a screenshot and text it to one of your teaching buddies. I'm so grateful that you landed here with me today, and it would mean the world to me if you would leave me a review over on Apple Podcast. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll catch you on the next episode. This is Elizabeth Peterson reminding you to get inspired so you can be inspiring to your students and enjoy teaching again.